Alrighty, welcome to day three of Career Bootcamp 2026, where you will explore how to turn challenges into stepping stones for growth personally and professionally. Please note that this session will be offered in English and French simultaneously. To view the French session, please return to the Zoom lobby and join the French session. Afin de visionner la session en français, veuillez retourner au lobby et cliquez sur le lien pour la session en français. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that I'm here on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. The Algonquin peoples have lived on this land since time immemorial, and I encourage all of you to acknowledge the land you're on as well. Career Bootcamp is the largest conference in the GC, and the only goal is to support you in your career journey. As we move through today's session, please share your questions by using the Q&A button in the language of your choice. You can vote for questions you like by clicking the thumbs up button. As with all Federal Youth Network sessions, this session will be recorded so you can go back to check out the recordings and the insights at a later date. In addition to this recording on the FYN YouTube channel, they're also offering another way to learn this year, and round of applause, a podcast series of the Career Bootcamp sessions. After Career Bootcamp, the podcast will be made available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We would like to also note that the PowerPoint presentations for each session is included on the FYN wiki page, so you can feel free to follow along at your own rate and pace to improve your learning experience. All the resources shared during this session will be added to the FYN wiki page under resources. It's also important to mention that this session includes discussion topics, vocabulary, and scenarios that some learners may find distressing. Please feel free to take breaks as needed. If you need support, remember that your organization's employee assistance program is available 24/7. We are all going through challenging times right now, whether you're directly impacted or not, and we are here for you. So with that, let's dive deep into all things about tackling burnout. So my name is Sanjana Anwar, and I'll be your moderator for this session. And basically, I've been working as an analyst for the Office of Public Service Accessibility at the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat since 2021. I have also a joint honors degree in the sociology and anthropology program at U Ottawa, along with a master's degree in anthropology where I focused in legal anthropology. I love volunteering and being involved with the community, so I have many years of experience in volunteering and leadership roles within the Student Association and university, and this continued on to my professional life as I'm currently the co-chair of Renaissance, which is the Young Professionals Network at TBS. So before we get into questions and introduce the lovely panelists for today, we have a couple of polling questions. So this is not mandatory, but we just want to kind of get a sense of how things are with you with burnout and how you understand it, how you navigate it, and just kind of understanding how you are approaching this session today. So the first question is, how often do you notice signs of burnout in yourself or colleagues? The second one is, how confident are you in your ability to manage your energy throughout the day? The third one is, what's your biggest challenge when prioritizing tasks? And the fourth question is, what's the hardest part about saying no at work? We'll give that a couple of minutes before the answers are shared. So we see that most people in the audience frequently or occasionally notice signs in burnout. Um, you're somewhat confident, but we have some people who are not confident in managing energy throughout the day. So the biggest challenges when prioritizing tasks are interruptions and shifting demands, and then feeling everything is urgent. Ooh, taking notes, panelists. And the hardest part about saying no at work, fear of disappointing others and worry about career impact. Wow, thanks for answering all of that. And I'm sure that the panelists will deep dive into all your questions, and I hope you can leave it a bit energized and knowledgeable. So as you can see on this slide, the learning objectives for today's event is to recognize the signs of burnout and understand its impact on your well-being, use prioritization techniques to balance workload, apply practical tools and strategy for managing stress, time, and energy effectively, and explore habits and routine that support sustainable work-life balance. So some of your concerns seem to be aligned with our learning objective today, which is amazing. And with that, let's dive into the panelists. So we have three lovely panelists. The first is Tasha Cloutier, who is an executive director at Indigenous Service Canada. Second is Hudan Mohammed, who's an early resolutions officer at Economic and Social Development Canada. And the third is Mary Michelle Craig, who's a senior advisor to the ADM at Parks Canada. So I'm going to pass it on to Tasha Cloutier to deep dive into her experience and her background of bringing the table.
Hi, everybody. I believe I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Hadan, who's going to go first, and I'll come along a little later.
No worries. Thank you, Tasha, and thank you, Sanjana. Hello, everybody. My name is Hodan Mahmood, and I'm Early Resolutions Officer here at the Labor Program at Employment and Social Development Canada, and I'm happy to be here with you all today. So let's talk recognizing the signs of burnout and understanding its impacts on your well-being. To look for those signs first, we need to understand what burnout is. When discussing burnout in the workplace, burnout is a systemic workplace condition that arises when organizational demands consistently exceed available resources, support, and autonomy. It reflects a mismatch between expectations and capacity, such as chronic workload pressure, unclear priorities, insufficient recognition, and limited recovery time, rather than a personal failure. Burnout signals that the work environment, structures, and culture need adjustments to sustain employee well-being, retention, and performance. It is important to note that burnout is not an individual issue. It is an organizational issue and a systems issue. As shown on the slides, we've broken the impact of burnout down into two categories: impacts on employee well-being and the impact on organizations. Let's start with the impacts on employee well-being box. You have 5 main ways it can impact an employee: emotional exhaustion and energy depletion, psychological distress, physical health issues, reduced sense of efficacy, and isolation and cynicism. So what does that look like? It could be chronic fatigue, lack of motivation, change in personality, psychological distress, including higher rates of depression, anxiety, and insomnia, irritability and negative attitudes towards work, decreased performance, including detachment from work, inconsistent appetite, emotional exhaustion, substance abuse issues, or bad eating habits. It is critical for us as an organization and as individuals to pay attention to warning signs we ourselves or our colleagues don't, so that we don't face burnout. Let's move on to box 2, impacts on organization. We have 5 key impacts: lower productivity and engagement. It makes burned out employees show decreased performance and creativity, higher absenteeism and presenteeism. Employees are more likely to take sick days when facing burnout, increased turnover and retention risks. People are less likely to stay in a role or on a team when they are experiencing burnout. Financial costs, there's not only lost productivity, but healthcare expenses when employees are experiencing burnout. And there's team performance decline. Burnout can reduce team collaboration and motivation to engage. So now that we know what burnout is and its impacts, let's look at some practical tools and strategies for managing stress, time, and energy effectively on the next slide. All right, let's start with some practical tools for finding balance. The most important way to prevent burnout is work-life balance. It is important to maintain a healthy work-life balance so you show up as your best self at work and at home. This includes starting and ending your days when you're supposed to and leaving work at work. Now, That is easier said than done, but we're going to go through some tools and strategies that can help with that. However, the first tool everyone should utilize is reflective questions. Regular self-reflection on what matters most to you ensures you are creating space, not just filling it. So, hopping into the tools, let's talk stress management. Techniques such as mindfulness, meditation, deep breathing exercises, and progressive muscle relaxation can help reduce stress throughout your day. So you can use apps like the mindfulness app, like Headspace, Calm, or Insight Timer for guided meditation and stress relief. There are also wellness programs such as the Employee Assistance Program, EAP. There's fitness classes or other mental health supports that can also be useful. And there's also department wellness events. I've had optional events such as sound baths and book clubs added to my calendar, and it's nice to incorporate those events even into my busier days. Making time for things like this during your week can make all the difference in managing stress over time. And even when those are not available, it is still important to incorporate regular breaks into your workday to recharge and prevent burnout. So get up and move, get a snack, or just have a mindful moment. All of those tools are great for stress management in the long run. So let's now talk about time and energy management strategies. Prioritization techniques to focus on high impact tasks can be really helpful to implement, such as the Eisenhower matrix or simple time blocking. So the Eisenhower matrix strategy has you divide work into 4 groups to do, to schedule, to delegate, and to delete. And that can be a really helpful approach to take when looking at your to-do list, even if there isn't anything in the to-delete category. You know, a lot of people said that everything feels urgent when they're looking at their to-do list. So really taking that time to reflect on it and break them into these categories can be very helpful in managing your tasks for the day. So after prioritizing your tasks, another helpful tool is breaking those tasks into smaller steps. This can help reduce feeling overwhelmed and any procrastination. Personally, the more tasks I can check off of my list, the more accomplished I feel at the end of the day. So this is a tool that I personally use. Another tool that can help you tackle that list is energy mapping. This is when you schedule demanding tasks during your peak energy periods. You can also color code your calendar with green for energizing tasks or meetings and red for draining tasks or meetings. So you can visualize where you need the most energy and schedule breaks into your routine around those energy time zones in your calendar. Lastly, another strategy is to consider task management tools like Todoist, Trello, or Microsoft To Do to help organize your tasks and reduce feelings of being overwhelmed. I personally utilize OneNote for work tasks, but I also have a colleague who utilizes Excel to manage their tasks and deadlines. So finding what works for you really is the key to not feeling overwhelmed and avoiding burnout. And lastly, there are resilience strategies that can help create that work-life balance. Healthy boundaries are important to protect recovery time. This includes saying no to overload and having clear and start and stop times. It is up to you to make sure you know what those boundaries are and asking yourself those reflective questions so that you can help make those priorities important for you. Another great tool is having a support network. Building a strong support network both inside and outside of work to share experiences and seek advice can help with not feeling alone when overwhelmed. Lastly, transition rituals or end of day routines. This can help you separate work and personal life. Going for a walk, changing your outfit, a short workout, or a couple minutes of reading. Whatever it is for you, creating this routine at the end of your day can help you transition you out of work mode and into your regular life. So to recap these tips for success: maintain work-life balance, take regular breaks to recharge, prioritize tasks, energy map your day by scheduling tasks during your peak energy periods, break tasks into smaller steps, utilize task management tools for organization, and boost resilience by tapping into wellness programs and support networks. Now, I will pass it on to Tasha to talk about maintaining boundaries.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here today. Um, I wanted this slide specifically when I saw it. A few things really stuck out to me with it. Being somebody that's been in the public service for a really long time, and I'll try to avoid dating myself, but a long time. This is something that's come with time and experience. To be able to maintain boundaries. And I can honestly say that it's something that I still struggle with and that I have to really look long and hard at sometimes. And what really stuck out to me for this slide is a quick story about myself and over the years of how I would often be completely incapable of saying no. People would ask me, or somebody would say, "Do you want to who wants to volunteer to do such and such?" And there'd be dead silence, and everybody's sort of like managing their own boundaries. And I'm like, "Me, I'll do it. I'll do it." I'd always want to break the silence by like stepping in and saying yes all the time. And over the years, I came to realize that that I would become very overwhelmed by that. Sometimes I would realize I had too many commitments on my plate, and try to figure out for myself, what do I need to do here? Like, how am I going to prioritize all of these commitments that I've made? And like it says in the slide, like take on only what you can handle, authentically say no without guilt. I was terrible at that. So for me, I would do a reset. When I started to feel really overwhelmed, like maybe approaching some type of a burnout, really stressed, really worried all the time and preoccupied, I would have to sit down and literally map out, like Hodan mentioned it, like just doing a mapping of what you have to do and figuring out what's optional. For you, what charges you, what fills you up, what is something that you're doing but you're not really enjoying it or feeling particularly energized by it. Now, I know that doesn't always apply at work, but sometimes it does. And I think I have another story to share later when it comes to nurturing your identity and your self esteem in the workplace. But for sure, maintaining boundaries comes with experience and time. I think it was a very small percentage of you, like 12 or something, who said, I don't have a problem saying no. And I think I'd like to hear from you about, how you managed to do that authentically and, and in a way that feels good to you. So I will turn over now to my colleague, Marie Michelle, to present the next slide. Thank you.
Thanks, Tasha. So happy to be here with you all today. I'm hoping you can hear me okay. Happy to be here with my lovely co-panelists. Thank you, Howden, for setting the stage so well with signs of burnout, impacts on well-being, practical tools and strategy. And thank you, Tasha, for being brave and vulnerable and sharing your own experiences with struggles with boundaries. I think we can all relate to what you shared. I'll just continue to elaborate on what Howden so well described at the top, that burnout isn't just about too much work. It's about too many competing priorities. And prioritization helps us make intentional choices about where our time and energy go. A simple way to prioritize is by asking two questions. Is this important? And is this urgent? This leads us to the four categories that we have on the slide. So the do first bucket, I'm going to call it, is for important and urgent tasks. These are the tasks that truly need attention today. So I recommend that you limit this list. I aim for no more than 3 priorities per day and really use time blocking, which my co-panelists referred to earlier, for these tasks to ensure that they're action and advanced. I treat these blocks like meetings with myself. They are non-negotiable. So time blocking helps reduce decision fatigue and helps keep you out of constant reaction mode. The tasks that are important but not urgent fall into the schedule category. And again, I definitely reserve spots in my calendar for these tasks. These tasks are critical for long-term success and are often the first things to slip. So think about, your planning meetings, your relationship building activities, your learning and wellness related activities or action items. These things are very important, but they're not urgent. So we often put them to the side so that we can focus on urgent and important tasks. Again, time blocking works especially well here to prevent future urgencies. The next part of the framework encourages us to delegate urgent but less important tasks. I wanted to highlight that delegation is not always an option, depending on where you stand in your organization. But when it is an option, I recommend that you be clear about outcomes and timelines, and I want to note that delegation is about trust and development and not just offloading the tasks. When delegation isn't possible, I would ask for support from teammates and have a proactive conversation with your management where you share constraints clearly and propose solutions. These solutions can include shifting priorities. If you want me to do A, then B will need to be deprioritized. Shared ownership. So where can we kind of collaborate with other functions or other groups and dissect it into smaller pieces and each kind of take our own spot or portions, or reallocating work to other team members or other groups entirely. So being solutions oriented really goes a long way when you're talking about delegation. And lastly, tasks that are neither urgent nor important simply shouldn't get on your to-do list. Not everything needs your time or your attention. Letting go is a skill and a boundary. And if you ask yourself, does this truly move the needle? And the answer is no, then let's take it off the list. Prioritization isn't about doing more, it's about doing what matters most well. Moving on to the next slide. This one focuses really on exploring habits and routines that support sustainable work-life balance. We talk about building healthy habits, goal setting, planning, spot triggers, and create structure, and then a few tips on how to make it real and practical. And as you know, balance isn't a one-time achievement. It's built through small, consistent habits. Sustainability matters more than perfection. So building healthy habits supports a sustainable work-life balance. And for me, that means sufficient, consistent, quality sleep and rest. Rest is also important. Good nutrition, regular movement, strong, meaningful relationships at work and outside of work. These aren't nice to haves for me. They directly impact my energy, my focus, and my resilience. I'm also a big believer in goal setting and planning, so was really happy to see this on the slide. I recently used the holiday period as kind of a natural pause to review and reset my goals. I know you've all heard this for years and years and years, but I do believe in setting SMART objectives, so specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And once I have them outlined, I then ask myself, what habits do I need to adopt to reach these goals? So I focus on habits that I can control, not just outcomes, and I track them. And I'm a big fan of the Atomic Habits approach by James Clear. So in his book, Atomic Habits, he explains how big changes come from small, consistent actions. And to be successful, habits need to be obvious, easy, and repeatable. Progress beats intensity. So if you want to learn more about the science behind building and maintaining healthy habits, I highly recommend that you read James Clear's book if you haven't already. On the topic of spotting triggers, one of the most powerful skills I'm continuously developing and refining is creating space between the trigger and my response. That pause in between the two really allows me to choose a response that's aligned with my values. And I encourage you all to think about a time when you've acted out of your values. Can you pinpoint what that trigger was? Can you give yourself grace for reacting in the best way that you could at that time? And intentionally work on creating space between that trigger, stimulus, and the response moving forward. It's really difficult work, but it's really important work and has really moved the needle for me. Lastly, on the topic of structure, I think your routines, your checklists, your clear start and stop times to the workday. These also support a sustainable work-life balance because it reduces the cognitive load, protects your energy, and creates oh my gosh, I'm struggling, sorry. French is my first language. Predictability, all of which are critical for preventing burnout. So to bring it all together, last section of this slide before we move on to the Q's and A's, let's make it real and practical. So really stick to your plan by setting reminders and using your calendar intentionally. My calendar is always color coordinated, filled with, this is what I need to action when, this is super important, this is less important, and then like reminders are in a different color. So I really leverage that tool and encourage you to do the same. On establishing and maintaining boundaries, I love Brene Brown's work. And her work reminds us that boundaries are not about pushing people away, they're about staying whole. Daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves even when we risk disappointing others. They're not intended to be walls that shut people out. They're about protecting your energy and values so that you can show up in relationships without resentment. Healthy boundaries create the space for true connection and respect to exist. Checking in with your manager regularly and being transparent about workload and capacity is another way that we can further our habits and routines to support work-life balance. You can use tools, including AI, to increase efficiency and to free up your cognitive space. Leveraging learning resources and courses for growth, not just performance, is also key. And I'm going to expand a bit on this point before wrapping it up. I'm bagging on the likelihood of this group containing a few sports fans. And I think it's relevant to make the distinction between how professional athletes think about performance versus how corporate/public service would think about performance. So for athletes, they clearly distinguish between practice, where skills are built, refined, mistakes are expected, and performance, where results matter and execution is the focus. They don't compete every day. Training days are intentionally designed. Rest and recovery are built into the plan, and high performance is cyclical, not constant. Athletes knows Athletes know they cannot perform at peak intensity at all times, and they plan accordingly. Versus in many corporate/public service workspaces, we expect daily peak performance, constant availability and responsiveness, mistake-free execution, even while we're learning. Practice, reflection, and recovery are often treated as extras instead of essential, and this can result in chronic urgency, fatigue, and burnout. So, what can we learn from athletes in that way? Practice time matters. So, learning, skill building, planning, and reflection should be protected time. Recovery is non negotiable. Sleep, rest, mental breaks are part of performance, not rewards for it. And structure enables excellence. So, clear routines, training plans, and off season prevent injury. Burnout is our version of injury. There we go. So with the kind of last comment I'll make is burnout prevention isn't about doing everything. It's really about doing the right things consistently and with intention.
Thanks so much for all your expertise and deep diving. So, a quick recap, Hudan took us on a journey of how to recognize when you're feeling burned out and tools to prevent it. Tasha delved deep into how to create boundaries. And then Mary had an unconventional approach of connecting being a public servant to being an athlete and how to take the right mechanism and prioritize your tasks. And so, with that, we'll move on to the questions. And before we do that, we'll briefly refresh on the backgrounds of each of our panelists. So make sure to put in your questions in the Q&A as the panelists introduce themselves a bit deeper.
I'm happy to go first if my co-panelists allow. So just a bit of a deeper dive on who I am and what brought me here. So I'm Marie Michelle Craig. I live in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, and I'm currently senior advisor to the vice president for real property and assets at Parks Canada. I've been a parkie for over 10 years, have worked in various roles and functions throughout my career, some in management, some not, mainly focused in procurement and finance, and really enjoying the senior advisor role where I get a more wholesome view of everything that we do at the agency.
So much for that, Marie. Does Tasha or Huzan, would you like to give a quick description of your background and what you bring?
Sure, I can go. I gave a little bit. I'm an early resolution officer at the labor program. I've been with the labor program for almost 4 years now. I don't know where time has gone. Prior to that, I worked as a constituency assistant for a member of parliament. I studied political science and communication studies, as well as a certificate in public administration and law. And yeah, that's what brought me here today was my passion of just learning and teaching and providing skills to others while also learning these skills myself. So I'm happy to be here.
Thanks so much, Hudan. And the mic's over to you, Tasha.
Hey. Hi, I'm Tasha Cloutier. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm a Wolastoqey woman from the Woodstock First Nation in New Brunswick, but I live here in Ottawa on Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory. I work at Indigenous Services Canada presently as an executive director in the Deputy Minister's office. And I've been in the public service, I'll just say it. This will be my 28th year this year, and entered at a very entry level position and worked my way up and just learned everything I could and had as many interesting and cool positions as I could, but ironically, always in Indigenous matters. So I've worked on Indigenous language revitalization, registration and band membership, reconciliation, which was a great time, and also worked part time at the Canada School delivering the Indigenous Learning Series. So love it when the Federal Youth Network invites me out to interact and be part of this group. So just honored to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, as you can see, audience, the panelist brings a whole wide, diverse range of experiences. So, with that, let's go on to the first question. So, anonymous attendee says, any thoughts on holding senior leaders within the organization accountable for leading to employee burnout? For example, when a task is now urgent, but through the communication chain, you can see it was sent weeks prior, but is now a task to be completed in a few hours. So more so that accountability piece.
Alan, it says that you'd like to answer the question in the question section. Do you have some thoughts to share on that, or? Oh, okay, no.
Oh, the floor is yours.
um, that's a really tough question. I'll jump in, and then hopefully Hodana and Marie Michelle will have more to say. I've seen that. Who has not seen that in their career many, many times? It's very frustrating as an analyst or the worker to receive something that you can see is now a flaming priority and it's dated. I see it every day. Not even gonna beat around the bush about that. And how do you hold senior management accountable? I think we have to hold each other and senior management accountable. And I don't like to use the language of us versus senior management, even though I am senior management now, I wasn't for the majority of this career. And, I like to think of us all as a team. And I also like to think that when we build strong relationships with our managers and our teams, we can be able to sort of bring that to light and say, look, like, no problem, I'm going to get this done, because you've told me this is a priority, this is what I will work on next. But how do we ensure that what's wrong with the system? Where could there be communication gaps within the system that could have prevented this from happening in the first place? And working in the deputy minister's office at IS just for a few months now. Never have I seen that more where, when you get to really get a bird's eye view of how long something took to travel through the system and come back. And, I think the best thing that you can do is just talk about it, call it out, but find a way to call it out, not with anger, but with genuine curiosity about how you can sort of find the gaps within the system that led to that in the first place. And you won't always, but, take the good opportunities where you think you'll have a voice on something and do your best to bring light to it. Anyone else have some? Because that question was upvoted like 20, 26 times last time I refreshed. So like it's obviously quite important to the group. Thanks.
Yeah, I can definitely jump in there. Just like you said, Tasha, when you like come at it of accusing somebody, they're gonna just kind of get defensive. And I think that's like the most important thing to like remember. You're looking for a solution. This is a problem that's affecting you, so you want to come at it from a positive light of like, I've noticed that these come in, you've sat on it, and maybe you're waiting for more information. However, maybe you can send it to me and I can work on it. And if it's not needed, so be it. It's okay. But getting it last minute is stressful and adds to your pot. And so acknowledging that and providing that solution can be very helpful. And coming at it from a positive lens, even when you don't feel that positive about the situation, really makes all the difference. And I think that that's the best way to kind of go at it is call it out as you see it, but do it in a respectful manner with that solution of how you would like it handled instead.
Those are great. I really don't have much to add other than obviously, try to focus on what's within your ann. I love what Ann shared about bringing people to, approaching it with respect, with curiosity, really coming at it with a solution oriented mind. And as part of my work as a senior advisor, a lot of taskings that are for our directorate come through me. It's my job to review them and then send them out. So this is a very relevant question to me, although I'm not senior management about, holding taskings because sometimes we want to get clarity. And I've learned through my experience that the best thing to do is do a little kind of huddle with those involved as soon as you can and try to get at least point out like where the issues are, and focus on getting clarity on those right away. But waiting is it never kind of works out well because you are kind of taking time down the line. So again, just focus on what's in your control. Try to create that space between the stimulus and response if you are feeling very strongly about the situation, and really try to approach with respect and curiosity.
I love those focuses on solution-oriented mindset and then also balancing that with proper communication and because we are all human at the end of the day. With that, we'll go on to the second most upvoted question, which is um, how can departments and agencies balance accountability for preventing burnout with empowering employees to advocate for their own well-being without making it feel like a burden is on just one individual? Ooh, this is a good one. Who wants to take the first crack? Okay,
I can
I'll
give
pick on. Oh,
I can
perfect.
give it a shot. That's a hard question just because there's the department and agency is so many people, there's so many moving parts. Um, I think about talking about it, right? Having that support network, like I mentioned, both inside and outside of work can help. But inside of work, talking to your manager, when you have your bilats or your touch points, whatever it is, talking about burnout and how to make workflow easier, even before it becomes a problem, right? So, and doing that self-reflection piece, thinking about, okay, how does my workday flow? What are things that I wish worked better? And having that discussion with your manager. There's only so much that we can control as an individual. And so making it known, hey, this is something that I would love to try and improve over the time being, that can really help. But there isn't really a great answer to this, but we can really only do so much. But being a support also for your colleagues is really important. Have your colleagues supporting you and just having those moments, those breaks with your colleagues, chatting, that can really help just have that camaraderie at work and avoid that burnout.
I can add to that. It's a good segue actually because shout out to anyone here from Heritage Canada. I just arrived here at ISK from Heritage Canada, and while I was there for 4 years, I was the executive co-champion of our Indigenous employee community. And there's a lot of rich communities within Heritage Canada, and all departments. You've got youth, accessibility, Black, racialized, LGBTQIA, Indigenous, Muslim, Jewish networks. Like there's so many networks within the departments, depending. Um, And one thing that we took very seriously in our role and for each other was to create that sense of community for one another. So, if you have some passion or corporate interests, and you could pull some folks together and have a voice, a collective voice that isn't just you. So, getting to the heart of this question is, why should I have to always advocate for my own well-being? Well, find a community of like-minded folks, and speak as a collective, perhaps. And that really worked for us because we would listen to what the community would say, and we would find ways to channel that back into our senior management table. So, yeah, I know that really worked for us, and I hope that you have some type of network like that. And if you don't, there's probably others federally. Like there's an Asian federal network, there's a Black employee network. So like they think of that. But I love Hadan's thoughts about just finding camaraderie within colleagues and having them as that support system, because some of us who work remotely, or maybe more introverted, might not have a bigger network, but your network can save you. It can really save your sanity when you're struggling with something and you just don't know how to tackle it. Having people to talk to is so huge. So thanks.
Those answers balance so perfectly with the previous question too, where it's communicating individual needs and then also finding community. And thanks so much for sharing that, Tasha. And with that, unless Mary wants to add anything else,
Good to go. I think they covered it super well. Thank you.
thanks so much. And so we'll go on to the next highest voted question, which is what are some tips? Apologies. So, out of work mode and straight into another job with no time in between to rest, how is it possible to balance things like exercise and balance basically all your workloads?
I really appreciate this question. It really speaks to me. So if it's okay with my co-panelists, I would love to take this one on. I am a mom of a 4.5-year-old son, and have made a lot of changes in my career while being a mom. And it is hard. I'm not going to sit here and be like, I have it all figured out. And if you do these steps, 1, 2, 3, you will be just fine. It is hard. And the only thing I can offer is that um, it, it I've had to really have a close look at how I spend my time and how is that serving me as a mother and as a professional. And it's not every day looks the same. Some days I am able to work out, usually at 8 p.m. after bedtime, let's be honest. And I do have a gym in my home. So I'm very fortunate that way that I've made it easy and accessible, kind of linking it back to Atomic Habits by James Clear. Some days I can't. Some days I get 10 minutes outside for a walk, and that's all I'm going to get that day. I do try to combine things too, like exercise and community are really important to me. So I'm very active in the volleyball culture or community here on PI. So I have friends that way, and I get to kind of exercise at the same time. So anytime where you can kind of like compound or smash those healthy habits together, it really helps. And I have a non-negotiable 9 p.m. in bed, 9:30 asleep rule in the house, although my husband mocks me for it all the time. It just, I have, it's trial and error throughout the years. You don't always get a full night's sleep as a mom, and I'm trying to get ahead of that always. And I can't pour from an empty cup, so I try to fill mine as often as and as frequently as I can. But again, having said all that, that's what works for me, and that may not be what works for the person that asked this very important question. I just encourage you to evaluate kind of what you're doing and see where you can get the biggest bang for your buck and set your boundaries, your non-negotiables.
So much for sharing, Mary. It's like, I love the idea of finding ways you can fill your own cup, and that will look different for everyone. If it's okay with all the panelists, let's move on to the next question, which seems to be a really hot topic, given the circumstance. And this is a reminder that if you don't feel safe or if you don't feel like in the mood to listen, you feel free to take breaks too. So the next question is, what are some tips for managing burnout and mental health during such unstable work times? WFA is affecting everyone, not just those who receive letter, and how does one keep up a boundary when the expectations have totally shifted?
Very important question that, to be honest with everybody, we had a pre-meeting yesterday and we anticipated this exact question was going to get asked. And, you know, I wish I could say that I have like a really eloquent and perfect answer to this, and I don't. Suffice it to say that, there's a lot happening right now, and there are a lot of people who are hurting, and like the writer says, there is that matter of sort of bystander guilt of folks that don't receive letters, but people that they care about and love are receiving them. Maybe even their spouse. I've been getting a lot of texts these days from folks who are in this exact situation, and how do you keep up a boundary when the expectations have totally shifted? Like, I feel like this isn't helpful, but it's going to get probably harder because those people aren't gone yet. And the expectations will continue to shift, and we will be continuously asked to do more with less. And so how do you like, I've seen so many great questions here. Like, I know somebody was saying, why do we have to use the upvote? And I get why we do that, but there's a lot of good questions in here about, um, how do I manage my mental health and burnout when I'm trying to go home, like Marie Michelle was just talking about, and be a mom and be a caregiver to a parent, or have all of these responsibilities. And um, all I can say is again, going back to your network of the people that you surround yourself with, either at work and at home, and having people that you can verbalize and talk to, and talk through some of the things that you're facing. Um, but I fear that this is something that we'll be talking about for years to come, would be the impacts of what's happening right now. And I wish I had more to say on that was uplifting, but I don't. Does anybody else want to add something to that? It's a really good question. It's a really tough one too.
I think that covered a good chunk of how to handle that, but there really is no perfect answer there. Um, Something that also might happen is you might be asked to take on way more work. And the best way to handle it is from the beginning. Write out your work tasks, write on the work tasks that you are being asked to take on. Try and estimate how much time those tasks are taking, and keep that ongoing conversation with your manager, your team lead, whoever it is, and just keep those expectations realistic from the beginning. Don't take on all of the burden of all this extra work that's going to come from this. Something my manager said to me the other day, we were talking about our workload has increased significantly over the last couple of months, and she said, "Don't own it. This isn't on you guys to own and to fix. Do your best. These are the solutions that we can continue to talk about, but at the end of the day, just log out. Don't own that workload that is sitting there, because it's not yours to figure out, it's theirs." And I appreciated that message. So that's one thing that I would suggest to everybody, is just figure out what your day-to-day looks like, what tasks you have focusing on the day, the week, the month, anything extra you're being added into your list, and keep that conversation open.
Thanks so much for highlighting those. It's definitely a huge topic in everyone's mind. Given that we have 10 more minutes left, we want to get in two more questions. So let's combine the two most upvoted questions here. So the first one goes back to in the poll when the audience says how to balance your tasks when everything seems urgent. And the second one goes more into how to approach management from a different position when their productivity is lacking because of burnout. So I know this might be a bit similar to the previous question, but is there anything that can help the community, the audience, in terms of the main parts of delegation and managing their tasks that you think would help them?
I hate to sound like a bit of a broken record. It's and it ties really well into what Hoden was saying about, expecting to perhaps do more with less. Well, we can't do more with less. We can do less with less. So we have a role to play, all of us, whether you're in management or a team member, team lead, employee, however you identify yourself, we all have a role to play around, again, being solutions oriented. Like I know it's tricky to continuously raise capacity constraints. It doesn't feel good to continuously go to your next level of management and say, look, like we can't do this. You're adding something to our plate. We need to take something off. But we're going to have to, if that's the direction that we keep going into. And I'll add this. So I listened to a panel from the national managers community recently about how to manage senior level expectations, and they really spent some time talking about the importance of clarifying tasks up front. And I really think that's important. Like I know for myself, when I get delegated something, I'm a doer. So I'm like, yes, I consider it done. I will do it. But that doesn't serve me or the other person. I need to spend time when I'm tasked something to really understand the timeline, the urgency, why, like who needs this, who's the audience, why do we need this, and then adjust accordingly. So sometimes, because I report to an ADM, he may ask me to do something, and I just assume it's urgent because he's an ADM, and if he needs something, he needs it now. Sometimes it's not. So if I just ask like, hey, like when do you need this by? And what are the risks if I'm not able to deliver this on time? Okay, great. That's good to know. There's this one task that you've asked me to do that I'm spending some time on. Can this be pushed out? Like that kind of conversation really goes a long way, and it helps you ease your sense of urgent, urgent, urgent. So I recommend that panel discussion. Perhaps it could be shared in the resources after this session, and they really spend a good amount of time talking about the importance of clarifying expectations up front.
So much for sharing that, Mary. And with that, let's go on to this next upvoted question, which is more future and forward thinking in terms of, are there any specific recommendations or goal setting and planning tools for efficiency, specifically for people with ADHD? These things are much different for us than neurotypical people.
So I don't have ADHD, but I have quite a few friends and colleagues that do. There is a group, and I don't remember the name of it at the top of my head, so I will let the Fin team know to put it in the resources. That is part of the government wide. That is for neurodiverse individuals, and they have a lot of resources and events, and it's great. And I'm so sad that their name is not on the top of my mind. That can be very helpful, but also working with your colleagues or anyone on your team. So I found something that helps a lot of people is when you're working on a task to help somebody stay on task is working on it together, or even just working on different tasks but on call, and that can be very helpful. So finding out when are you the most productive for setting your goals, for working, and what does that look like? Why are you the most productive during that time? And so for everyone, it might be a little bit different. But if it is working with somebody else, setting that up, making maybe once a week or every other week. Maybe it's setting a timer. Maybe there's different tools, but finding what works best for you is really important, and actually being very decisive about putting that into your routine, putting that into your calendar, being very intentional. That could be very helpful.
Thanks so much, Hadan. And any other final words from the other panelists before we come to a close?
Just one quick, I did a quick Google because it was right on the tip of my tongue too, Hadan. It's called the Infinity Network. And a good friend of mine, Mary Rose Rogers, she was working with them quite a bit. I put a link to but you can Google them, Federal Employee Infinity Network. And they have a GC collab page. And I've met a few people in that network and they're fantastic and they're very supportive of each other. So totally encourage you to check that out.
Thank you so much. That is exactly the network that I was thinking of. I have a friend that is also part of the network who raves about their events and how much it's helped. So I really do encourage anybody to check it out. Even if you aren't with ADHD or anything else, their events are still wonderful. So
Thank you so much, panelists, for sharing your wealth of wisdom and knowledge. I hope the audience were able to take a lot away from this and implement it in your own lives and work as we go on. I'm definitely looking forward to watching this recording on the FIN YouTube page or check out the podcast series the next time I have questions on this topic. So we have one final polling question for you. The results from the poll will not be shared, so feel free to be as honest as you'd like. So the question is, was this session a good use of your time? Yes, no, I don't know. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you join us at 2:30 p.m. Eastern for the next workshop called Psychology Safety Starts With You. The link to all sessions can be found on the Zoom events main page, and then resources will be available on the wiki page, and the recording of this event will be available on our YouTube channel as well. Thank you, everyone, and I hope you're able to find some peace and calm as you handle your um, work-life balance.